Welcome to the You Go and Get It Girl podcast, a platform engineered to inspire girls and women of all ages to follow in the footsteps of high-achieving women in business, entertainment, and sports. A living reminder that you can't stop a go-getter. Go-getter, noun, defined as an aggressively enterprising person. A go-getter knows they can have any life you want. You can too, but you have to take it. You have to go and get it. We hope to help you do just that. Here is your host, Kurt Richardson.
Hey everybody, thank you for joining us. You Go and Get It Girl podcast. I am Kurt Richardson and I'm joined by my wife, the CEO of the Richardson household, Angela Richardson, recent Spartan graduate, gymnast Leah Mitchell, and student at Winston-Salem, Joy Shipman. And we have a very special guest today. So special that she's even in my presentation that I do for the NFL, which is how I met her. So we have Allison Stangeby from the New York Giants. She's the Vice President of Corporate and Community Relations for the Giants, two-time Super Bowl champion. Yeah. Mother, wife, badass that's been in the NFL for 30 years now, right? I used to say a different number, but since 1991?
So I'm in my 32nd season this year.
Unbelievable. We have to clap for that, everybody. It just doesn't happen. It just doesn't happen. And on top of all of that, you're in the biggest media market. You had to respond to 9/11 and COVID and some things that we'll talk about there, but I'm so glad to have you on and share with us. Even though it's football season, we got Allison on. So thank you so much for joining us. I'll have some questions, they'll have some questions, and hopefully the people that see this understand that what we're doing is we're trying to demystify the process for women and girls to see high-achieving women. What's the thought process that happens with them? What are the questions and that we should be asking to make sure that I'm a girl dad. I have twin girls that are 4. I have a 26-year-old daughter as well. So every quarter century, I have some kids and they're female. So I want to make sure they have the right information to have the life that they want. And then along the way, I meet people like Joy and Leah, who I've both met in the sports capacity, I guess, to some degree, that are in a position to go chase their dreams in a way. So we appreciate you for giving your time and treasure of knowledge and IP. I want to start, we'll do some background stuff for the podcast that'll just have your regular bio, but I want to start here, Allison.
Okay.
91, Scott Norwood misses the field goal that wins the Giants their second Super Bowl.
Right.
You're not with the Giants then, but later that year you are.
Right.
Do you remember watching that game?
Yes. Actually, yes, I do. I think I was at a friend's house I don't even know where these people are at this point in my life. So a friend's house in probably Ridgefield, New Jersey. And, and I was more interested in the Italian meal that the parents were cooking than the game. There you have it. At
that point, are you a Giants fan? Are you a football fan? Or are you just at the game because it's Super Bowl and that dominates America?
It doesn't. Yeah, that's it. There was food. There was good food. I'm all about good food. So always have been, always will be. I think, because I grew up in Bergen County where the Giants are. So I kind of remember there was a strike in the 80s and they ended up, LT, Harry Carson, they ended up practicing at one of the fields like behind my house and then down the street at our high school. And I think at that time, Harry and LT both lived in my town, I think, but I wasn't a sports fan. Some of the guys I hung out with in high school played football, but I can remember saying to John Maurer, so why is that third down so important? I don't understand that, when I first started. I will confess to you, yesterday or the day before, I said to him, I love when you're away. I love when you're away. I need the yellow line. I love to watch it on TV. I need the yellow line because I'm my eyes aren't so good anymore. So I like watching it on TV. I think I like watching it on TV better than I like watching it in person. I hate to say that. Yeah, but I like to see the whole thing unfold. And I know football now. I can see the penalty about to happen. I can flying on the fly. So yeah.
I love it. So as that happens, you're in television, and then the reason I started using your story is I work with the Jets as well. I'm stuck in the traffic we were talking about before we started taping one day. and they're doing a story on the Tom Coughlin fund, the J Fund.
Right.
And they briefly describe you, and they're like, she came over from, I think, television as an assistant in 91, and now she's the vice president. Now, I'm always on the lookout for the go-getter story that everybody doesn't know. Like, everybody knows about Tiger and Serena. And so I collect go-getters. And I just jotted that down, and I had no idea I'd ever later work for the Giants. But I started talking to the players about, like, imagine, like, this lady, Allison, who's in New York City, and all the contacts she would make. I would joke that you could probably get a hold of the president and tune phone calls. Like, I'll call someone who could then call the president because of the market. And I would try to teach the players the idea of connectivity. You don't know where the conversation is going to take you to. So you basically got the job the way all of us get a job, a friend of a friend. But as that happens, are you thinking career, or are you thinking, I just don't want to drive to New York City anymore?
I'm thinking I'm not going to the city anymore. And I agonized over taking the position. So I agonized over it. And so I worked for John's best friend, Timmy. And Timmy was the senior vice president of ad sales at Channel 9 at Channel 9. So ultimately I wanted to go into ad sales or, sell advertising or something like that. But my commute, although only 18 miles from door to door, was something just barbaric. It was very difficult. And I'm like, I'm done. And I would find myself driving a lot. So I would drive into the city because the mass transit was just crazy. So I started working for John. So Timmy's like, John is looking for an assistant. He's going to go work for his dad in New Jersey. I'm like, oh, that's cool. What do they do? And he's like, his dad owns the Giants. I'm like, really? So I had two friends who are now married. And actually, I just spoke to them the other day, who we went to dinner one night and they're like, you need to take this job. Like, you need to take it. Meanwhile, I had my dad saying, I didn't pay for you to go to college to be an assistant/secretary. He's like, we just got done paying for college. We really, you want to follow your dream, So I came over and told John, I said, I'm going to come. I'm going to help get you settled. I'll stay for like a year or 2 years, and then I'm going to go off and figure out the rest of my life. Probably go back into the city, move into the city or something like that. All my friends lived in the city. So here we are. He came from a law firm, and he was an attorney. So he made me take speed writing. So I went because he's like, I need somebody who can do steno. I'm like, what are you kidding me? I'm like, I can't do steno. I can barely type, So I can still speed write. And I did that for a few years. And as I sat at that desk, I worked with him and his brother, Frankie. And Frank was doing promotions and stuff. But we would every once in a while get requests for appearances. And I'm like, who handles this? So I just started kind of like, oh, hold on, let me see what I can do. But back then you didn't have access to the players. Am I getting off? If I'm off the rails, you just stop me when I'm off the rails. So, so we didn't have access to the players. So you couldn't go downstairs. The girls couldn't go anywhere. Also, I keep looking to make sure nobody's listening to me, but I guess everybody's going. There were no female executives in the organization.
I'm aware. Yeah.
Yeah, no female. So I was the only female with a college education, and that kind of back then, it was a lot of old school. So like I was going into territory that was not acceptable. It was like, I kind of was pushing, gently pushing, but like I could see crystal clear that this is what needed to happen. Like this is where the world was going. This is where sports was going. Like, and you would see it little bits and pieces everywhere. There was no sports marketing at that point. So we started, so I just started trying to get the guys into appearances. How I got those. So originally I would stand in the back parking lot and wait for them to come out after practice. So, and I'd have my little notebook. I would write everything down, and, I would go out there and try and book them into appearances. So it became obvious that it was kind of lucrative for the players to do these appearances through the team, because they had some people outside booking them, but I didn't take any, they would come back and say, here's 20%. I'm like, I don't want your money. I'm like, I work for the team. They pay me, I don't want your money. So through that, we slowly started we did the Mothers Against Drunk Driving. We did church synagogues. We just did those types of appearances. And then there were some card shows and stuff like that. So, it started slow. While I was doing it, I was still John and Frankie's assistant, and I just didn't have time for them anymore. I just had no time or no interest. So John finally said, we need to hire a new assistant. I said, I agree with you. So he hired Nicole, who is still his assistant now, and he said, let's see what you can do. So that was, I want to say, Nicole started in 94 or 95. So, and I've been on my own ever since.
I love that. And so just so you know, that's I know some of your story that you don't know that I know. And that's why we wanted to get you on here, because people don't know that sometimes there's not a path for you and you've got to go make your way. And I knew that as a man because I would see it on TV, men doing that. But I noticed with my oldest daughter and some of her friends, they don't have that point of reference, even still as the world is changing, to your point. So I love the idea of we just had Jennifer Justice on, who was Jay-Z's first attorney, and she's a big New York, she's quintessentially New York. Same thing. She just went and got it. And that's the whole idea of being a go-getter. So I love that story. As your Giants are super family friendly. Bill Belichick joked one time that they never fire anybody at New York. So people are there forever. And of course there's turnover and ever, but in 91, even though I look at the Giants as female forward now, it's still mostly male. If I go through your front office, it's almost all male until your department. But Ashley Lynn was one of 32 player engagement directors for a while. Now there's a couple other women. In 91, you already touched on it. There's not basically, is it all the women in the building are assistants?
Yes, they're all assistants. So, and what's interesting about Ash, so what ended up happening, I should throw this in there too. So when John said, okay, you're on your own, let's go see what you're doing. One of the guys brought up to me, I hate to leave, turn my back, let's just say this, came up, dropped this, this is just an example. It's yours now. It was all the player development. I was the first female player development person too in the NFL.
I did not know that.
So until Charles Way. Yeah, so then when Charles Way came, so when Charles left, when Charles was injured, they wanted to keep him on the team. And they came to me and they said, what can we do with him? Can he come into your department? What do you think? I said, well, I'm not great with player development because I'm putting all my energy into CR. But I went to the meetings, I helped them with their education. I got financial people in here. I had people come in and help them with their resumes and all that type of stuff. So I definitely was like hitting the boxes. So Charles came in and, you know, he and I worked together on that for years. And then, you know, obviously David and now Ashley. So yeah, but I can clearly remember being at a meeting in Chicago and someone saying, players aren't going to talk to her. I'm like, I stood up. I'm like, you're wrong. I said, most of these guys have been raised by moms and they're going to talk to me before they're going to confide in me before they come and confide in another man. And
so, right. And so I left one thing off your background, Bill Emerson, Good Samaritan Award winner in Congress, but I had no idea of the player engagement thing. That is great perspective.
Yeah.
Ladies, what are you thinking? As Allison's told some of her story, like what are the questions we have or what are the things that sparks inside of you that somebody watching this who's either looking for the boost of energy to know that, you know, women can go and take their control of their own destiny, or, hey, I want to break into sport. What are the questions we're thinking right now just on that background?
Go ahead. Go ahead, Leah.
Oh, I was just wondering because I'm a broadcast major, so in journalism, and there's now a lot more people, women in media, but also women of color in media. So I was just wondering, with being the first woman in a lot of those positions, how did you face challenges? Like what gave you encouragement? How are you bold enough to like stand up for yourself or like even just be brave enough to go into those positions?
Leah, honestly, I am typically somebody who, like, when I came in, I said, I don't get mad. Like, I don't get, like, the fact that I had to get mad before I got on this call and somebody, like, I was going off, they're like, whoa. So I kind of, I don't even know how, I feel like I was blind. Like I just kept my head down and I just kept going. And that was it. Like I just kept going because in my head, I was like, I know the way this should look. You know what I mean? Like I knew that there was a certain way that this department should look, that player development should look. Like I knew it. And like, I feel like if you have it in your, like somebody said to me, they're like, it's in your soul. You come from your soul on everything you do. And I don't know if that's true. I just feel like I knew that this was the way, this is what had to happen. You know what I mean? And I kind of just kept pushing. Now, let me tell you, it was met with resistance many times. And I would take a step back and then I would figure out a different way to navigate it. So And I feel like that, because I had to do that now when things pop up, like I kind of take a step back and I'm like, okay, how am I going to get around this? Like, what are the obstacles? How am I going to get around it? Because there's sometimes where I don't feel like you can run through those obstacles. Sometimes you have to go around them and get ahead of them. You know what I mean? And it could be people, it could be situations, it could be relationships. And what I always say is that relationships are your greatest asset. You know, you can go, you know, Michigan, Winston-Salem, like you guys, your relationship, for me, relationships. You know, you build them, you treasure them, you nurture them, and that's what helps you. And that's what's going to help you, you know, push forward. Did I answer that? I don't even know if I answered that right.
But Allison, you're doing it. This is already one of the best ones. We've had some juggernauts on here, but you're natural into it. But by the way, and Angela's got a question. Leo, what do you think I'm thinking as she says that answer based on the last interview we did? You know what word just popped into my head? I'm going to cut this out, so I'm just curious. What
word?
Intuition. We've been talking to so many women, Allison, and people don't want this to be the answer. I'm getting more and more converted to the idea that it's a freaking superpower, like a legitimate superpower. When you're saying speak from the soul and that's your language, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but what I'm hearing is it's another high achieving woman who's done stuff basically nobody can do, breakthrough. You're like one of the first, and all of these women, one thread that I'm seeing is just trust your gut and just go, you know.
Gut. That's and it's funny because yes, gut, but I use gut across everything in my life. It's weird. And there are times like I wouldn't talk about it, but like it's crazy. Like
we're way in on it now. In our house, we talk. There's a supernatural thing occurring. And Angela explained, she's been learning some of the science of it, the difference between testosterone and estrogen and what it does to the mind and the in-tuneness. We had Jennifer talk to us a little bit about, it's about whether you have a baby or not, the ability to have a baby forces you to have to anticipate life out further than other people. So it sounds esoteric and out of the world, but I'm like, I'm a big person that picks up on like, what are I believe success leaves clues. And I think intuition is one of these things that maybe most girls are not hearing trust your gut enough, because one of the things a previous guest said is she had the exact same intuitions at 20 and 30, but just didn't go with them. Now she's a juggernaut, super successful in her 50s, and she's winning because of intuition, and wishes she could have gone back and just followed it earlier.
Right. Oh, and listen, no joke. I should have pushed. I feel like I should have pushed harder in my 30s and 40s, but then like where would I have been now? Because it would have been met with so much more resistance. It's interesting that everybody in here doesn't know my story. They just think, hey, it's that old lady in the corner. But like, I'm like, girls, you're not like, it was a lot. It took a lot to get here. You know what I mean? It took a lot, but it's interesting too, because then, you know, once you start having, and Angela, like having kids is a game changer. So I think also working through having kids and, having to prove yourself. So back when my oldest is 24 and my boys are 21. So there was no maternity leave here.
Are you a twin mom?
I am. One is adopted, one's birth. They're 8 weeks apart. So essentially, I feel
that
like
would have been wild to have yet another twin mom. Side note.
I feel like if we can say twins started at like 2, I'm a twin mom.
You're a twin mom, yeah. Anything under 5. Anything under 5.
I'm a twin mom who had a child who's, I'll just give you this background really quick and you can cut this out. My son, we adopted him out of foster care. He was born addicted to drugs and was in the hospital for 40 days on being detoxed, and came to us with a lot of issues, a lot of issues. And somehow or another, and I don't know, I think we had blinders on. My husband did a phenomenal job with him, and they said he'd never mainstream. He was going to have X, Y, and Z issues. He was the prom king. He was captain of soccer, captain, baseball. He was everything. He hated school. So let's be honest, school is not for everybody. He was not a great student. He's got a great personality, and now he is a soldier in the Army. So he is stationed at Fort Campbell. So yeah, so he has really, he kicked it. So, but back to being a mom, I feel like, first of all, I feel like females work harder. period.
Okay.
Because we have to, in a man's world, we have to prove that we can do what they can do, keep up with them, and live in that world. Being a female with children, you work even twice as hard because you know that you're going to be criticized. Oh, she's got a kid. She can't do that anymore. She's got 3 kids. She can't work. You know? So it was a long haul. It was a long haul, but everybody is good. Good. So,
Joy, Angela?
So Allison, that leads me into a question that I have for you about navigating the career and becoming a mom. So like women are often faced with, is now the time to be a mom? Is now the time to excel my career? What advice do you have to give to even Joy and Leah, if that is their thoughts for their future? How do they navigate that?
okay, so let's be honest. Is there ever a good time to have a baby? Like, is there ever a good time? Like, I don't feel like now, and I'm too old to have a baby right now, but if like now, settled and like, you know, successful, I don't even think now's a good time for me to have a kid. You know what I mean? So I think you go, you follow your path. And again, back to intuition, you're going to feel it. You know what I mean? You're going to know when it's right, you know, and you're going to need to also be not blinded by it because it's not easy. So if you think, oh, I want to have my career, I want to have this, I want to have that. Well, guess what, everybody? It's not easy. It's not easy to be great at everything. And my kids, if Haley was to jump, my daughter, if she was going to jump on, she'd tell you, do you know that we were always the last kids picked up at camp and at school, you know? So they would tell, do you know that she made stir fry every night for dinner? Like these kids are going to be in therapy for the rest of their lives once they figure out how to get there. But it's just nothing is graceful. I think, you know, and not kidding yourself, like, don't look on social media because social media is a lie as far as I'm concerned. If I were to post anything from my life, you would see me tripping over the dog, trying to feed him, you know, it's not easy. That's what I'm going to tell you. It's just not easy, but you can do it. You have to have faith in yourself and you have to have that drive. And I get based just the fact that you two are on here, you have it. You have it. It's crystal clear. Being an athlete, hello. Being an athlete, so you're a D1 athlete.
Yes,
I know that life. My daughter was a D1 swimmer, so I know you're up at 5 a.m. or thereabouts. You're at practice for 2 hours before you go to class. You go. Most likely, you're sleeping in the locker room and doing your homework in the locker room, going to school, coming back, working with your academic advisor, taking a nap on the floor of the locker room, and then go into practice again. I mean, I'm guessing I'm just saying that was my daughter's life. So it's ugly, but it's so rewarding because it creates a really good foundation for you. And I always like you guys, whether it's sports or it's arts or it's something like just doing something outside of going to school creates your ability to go on and be able to master different things and multitask, you know? So I think that you guys, you get through it. That's the only thing, you get through it. And don't expect it to be graceful, because when you expect it to be graceful, that's when you're like, you become disappointed in yourself. Just gotta keep plowing through.
Joy, anything from you down there?
They actually both asked the questions that I was going to ask. So I just was going to reword them, but that was good answers.
Fantastic. I love it. Hey, so I want to take you through another thing in place. So I work with the Jaguars as well. And I have met this big scary guy that they call Tom Coughlin. And although Allison is non-existent, she mentioned social media, but when I started putting her in my presentation, there was 2 photos of her online. Now there's like 7. Like your digital footprint is small, which I know. Well, I understand it.
And full disclosure, I'm the wife of a retired federal agent. So he was with DEA and was undercover for 32 years. So like that's also why you don't see a lot of me. So
actually, I used to joke that you must have been in witness protection because there was literally only 2 pictures. And until you and I got our picture together, I had the same like 2014 picture of you in my presentation.
I'm telling you, there's not a lot. And anything that ever is taken, like, first of all, I do not photograph well. But then, like, my husband will be the one taking the pictures. And I'm like, oh, we should post it. He's like, we're not posting anything. He doesn't even have any social media. And he has his own business. And I said, the reason people don't hire you is because they think you're a psycho. You don't have any social media.
Well, what's funny is I know about you, and I know the people that know you. I knew you would have a great story to tell us. I actually, because of that, thought maybe she doesn't want to be on public like this. So I'm glad you did it. I bring up Tom because one of the few things you can see about you online is that at first you were a little intimidated by him. And so many women, I believe that there's a role for both of us. And I think being adjacent to high achieving males is also fine for women because you're going to lift. The rising tide lifts all boats. But sometimes with the TCs of the world and some of these people, sometimes if your initial gut reaction is like intimidation, sometimes we miss that opportunity to rise with that boat, but you didn't. Talk about that process. Like, here's this guy at first. He's an old school dude. They don't make a lot of dudes like him anymore. When you meet him, your initial feelings and how did those change? And obviously, one of the most beautiful things I saw is, and you weren't in the room, it sounded like, when he retires, he shouts you out. And I just think that is, it pulls on my little, I'm a bit of a meathead and a kid from the streets, but it gives me the Onions feel. So talk about that process.
I was hiding in the back crying.
Oh, you were there?
Yeah,
okay.
I was in the way back of the room crying, and he said it, and I just went, ooh. So, I kind of remember John saying, all right, we're bringing this coach in. And like, when I say John, it's John Maris. So he's my boss. So he's like, we're bringing this guy in. He's like, he's going to be tough. He's going to give you a real run for your money. So in my head, I'm like, okay, so he's going to give me a run for my money. I've already gone through Jesse Armstead, Michael Stray, and LT. I'm like, all right, whatever, bring him on. Let's see. So we started off, and I think it was just like a normal mutual respect. It was like, hey, how are you? And then slowly but surely, as he started telling me more about the J Fund, and we started helping with the J Fund and doing different things and like kind of upping certain things that he wanted to do, we just came to a great place. And I don't even know, like, he kind of reminded me, I love old school. You know what I mean? I love old school. I think he also, I think he loved the fact that my husband was like DEA undercover. I also think that at one point when he was here, it was probably 2 years he was here. My husband got transferred to special ops and in Washington. So I was here by myself with the kids. And I think he respected the fact that, like, all right, we're going to get it done. We're going to, I just would constantly get it done. And he, I think he appreciated that. But he was more like a father figure. You know what I mean? Or he just really made you feel good. And he taught me a lot. Like, I can't give you examples, but he just taught me how to be, he was just a good human. And I just hope that I learned how to be a good human from him. I hope that my vibe is that, people are like, oh, she's a good, like, I credit obviously my parents and, but he was just so good. He was good and always just did the right thing. That's it. He just got it. So he was tough. He was tough. But, you just got to kind of bob and weave. You know what I mean? So.
Now, as you're doing that in the moments, and I know I'm around some of these guys, and even in social settings, it can be very sharp, is the word I'll use. I'm sure there's situations, I'm not asking you to speak on a detail, but sometimes you get poked and you're deflated a little bit. When that happens, how do you personally rebound from that? Like, how are you able to make it not personal? I worked with one of the most successful people in Michigan, and I mean, he ran our whole company, but his office was by mine. And one day I suggested something to him. It was bad timing, whatever. And he put a pin in me that sank me for like a week. But I had people around that could build me up. Sometimes with women, I notice I try to, I counsel a bunch of women, like just kind of like, and just like start charging people. Like, I try to build people up, and I'm an executive coach on other things, but I'm like, a week is probably too long, but I've seen people that their whole relationship, that pin, it's like, oh, that guy's bad forever. And how do we respond to that and just take the moment for what it is? Because you're in what I love about having you on is, I don't care what people say, oh, I don't watch NFL, this, that. It's the most alpha league there is on the planet. Mm-hmm. You're talking about the 1% of the 1%, it's barbarians.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like if there's something that goes wrong, or if there's something that's not right, I feel deflated, but I'm more inclined to fix it or make it good. So I don't really go back into a shell. Listen, I would love to lie in bed and pull the covers up over my head. I'm not going to lie to you. Listen, that would be so easy. I would love a pity party. But like, who's going to answer the emails? Who's going to answer the phone? Who's going to do this? Who's going to do that? Like, I have to keep forging ahead. And I feel like when something happens that really like sucks the wind out of you, you kind of go back around and say, okay, how can I fix this? Like, what are they looking for? What is going to make this work? And especially if you're passionate about it. And then there you go back to that intuition. Like, if you feel it. We had a project that came up. I think I started working on it in 2013 or 14. Okay. It kept getting, and I knew it was a great idea. I knew it was good. So it was the 50-50s that they're all doing in the stadiums now, the raffles. I started working with a company in 2013. I said, this is great. This is great. I went through all the reasons internally why it was great. And they went through the group went through every reason why we shouldn't do it. 13, 14, 15, 16. Finally, I brought Alyssa, who works in my department. She came on in 2018 or 19. And I said, Alyssa, I can't fight this. I've been fighting this since 2013. And I gave her all my notes. I gave her all the files. I gave her everything. And she's like, this just makes sense. I'm like, I know, it's making money for the foundation. They found every reasons not to do it. So I said, let's see what you can do. And I feel like they were just so used to saying no to me, men. I feel like they weren't willing. So I said, in that situation, I let Alyssa navigate it. And I gave her all the reasons why it was good. I said, here are their concerns. I said, these concerns are not valid. They've proven that these concerns aren't valid. So can you take this and go? So even if so that's team, you know what I mean? So if that's not about, I knew it was a good idea. I knew it should happen, but I also knew that I wasn't going to break that. I was not going to get through, but I knew somebody else might get through. So I took myself out of it, stuck her in, and guess what? We got bumped 50-50. So I think also when you're talking about doing things, to navigate something and make something better, you don't always have to be the person to do it. Like if you feel you can take yourself out of that situation and maybe plug somebody else in to get it done, not to say, oh, you do it, I don't want to do the work. Just because I knew it was like me for 6 years pounding the pavement, I'm like, they just need a different face. What they do different? Nothing. It was weird. But I would say this to you guys too. I would say, don't be afraid to bring somebody else in. Don't feel like you have to do everything on your own. Like, I feel like being a good manager is showing people how to get it done so that, we always joke around. This is really morbid. We always joke around, we've got a book in case I die or in case I jump. You know what I mean? So Alyssa has one and I have one. So you know how to do our jobs. But like, I feel like raising everybody up, bringing everybody in, so that everybody's working together. So, and showing them the way is like so important. I don't need to take credit for it. You know what I mean? I'd rather see Alyssa do it at this point, and for that, I'm like, well, you know what, that I did, I raised her right. You know what I mean? It's like I raised my kids. So I feel like as you go through life, don't be afraid to bring other people in to help you. It's definitely, ideas, different, handling a situation a little bit differently. So I think, to your point, like I don't, did I even answer the question? Here I go again, off on a tangent.
No,
Sorry.
You answered it brilliantly. One of the things I think is very interesting about what you just said is, part of me, it's weird being a guy, but my whole life is about these. I got a granddaughter, 2 twin daughters, and an older daughter. And I'm in rooms. I met Leah, like I work with this. I'll walk in the athletic department and it'll be of the programs. The reality is the star athletes aren't always going there. I'm working with a lot of Olympic sports. I'm not getting a ton of 5-star basketball players and football players in that level. I walk in a room with you guys and it is Saquon Barkley. And because the league demands, hey, if we're going to elevate you to this position, you've got to elevate some of your skills and stuff. But I say all that to say this is, one of the things that I take from this is how do I help build a bit of a matriarchy? And what you just said is a piece of that. Men, we struggle to get out of the way. A guy will hold on until they're 85 and dead, and say there's no pipeline and and we've talked about this with other guys. What you're talking about is building that bench, but also you know, what I love is that's building like another Allison. And then Allison can build another one. And long after, building another Allison, and you said Carrie?
Alyssa. It's
Alyssa, sorry.
Alyssa. Yeah.
Now Alyssa can build another Alyssa. And that's what I think guys naturally did that. We had a 100-year head start in the workforce. And that just became the norm, that we're going to pull up someone who looks and thinks and acts like us. And now we've got to have more women, more people of color, more people who are both of those things doing the same thing. And so I love to hear that story of that. That's your instinct. That tells me a lot about your character. Like, all right, like I don't need the credit anymore. And it's cemented. And that's what it's hard sometimes with. Where I met Joy, I was in ESPN. To find the next me to do player engagement stuff. One, it's a lot of travel, and Angela comes with me on most of them, but sometimes I got to leave her behind with these sometimes bad twins. I love them, but they're maniacs. They're absolute maniacs.
They're 3.5, so.
You know how it is. I'll come to the Giants for 55 minutes, but it takes me 8 hours to do that. I got to fly to, It's wild. And so I wanted to hand that off. And my instinct was go down to this Black Sports Biz that was put on by the Rams in ESPN down in there. I didn't find any dudes. I found Joy and a couple of the people in her networks. But my instinct is to hand it off. Like, I transitioned from the guys, like, I went from being like big bro to uncle. And I'm like, oh, I don't want to do that. Like, I had their ear for a minute. Like, they could tell I'm a street kid and have had some success. But now it's almost like the older I get, the more the resistance to the message there can be. I'm happy to hand it off. But the people, my peers and the other people, they're never going to let it go. They're, some of the people that work in player engagement, they've been doing it for 40 years, 30 years, 20 years. They don't have an interest for that. So I think that's for the women that are watching this, and I know I'll have some support from people who are successful and checking out what we're doing. I just would love for that to be a part of what they think their legacy is how do you go find the next person and duplicate it and make sure it's, men have no problem finding their work son and really, have someone that looks like you, whatever it is, put people in a position or crack the door open for somebody. And so that leads me to thinking, like, when you're evaluating talent, you're at one of the biggest markets, legendary team. There's no shortage of resumes coming into your department. I know that. What do you even notice? Like, what stands out to you when you're meeting with people, good or bad?
I like to see that I like to see extracurricular activity. Like, if I'm looking at a resume, I want to see extracurricular. Like, I want to see maybe you volunteered, you're an athlete. I want to see something like that. But I don't care what your grades were. Listen, truth be told, I wasn't such a great student. You know what I mean? I want to sit here and have a conversation with you. I want to get your vibe. I want to see like what you're all about. And I know probably inappropriate, but I'm like, hey, where'd you grow up? Did you go to this restaurant? Do you know these people? That type of stuff. I get a better vibe I can gauge better off of that than asking all of the traditional questions. So what do you want to be when you grow up? And, your GPA was this. No, that's garbage. For me, it's garbage. I know in some industries it's not, but for me, I want to feel you. I want to see, want to get your, are you okay working like these crazy hours? Are you gonna, do you want to, continue in this industry? What are your goals? What are you thinking? So I also think that comes from, my dad was a HR guy. So I feel like he kind of ingrained that in us. So you kind of would hear him talking to people, and I kind of picked up on that along the way. So I just kind of want to see what's going on. That's it. I don't want to ask all those traditional questions. Ethan, who works with me, he asks all the questions. I want to feel it, I want the intuition. There we come again. Intuition. I want the intuition to kick in.
Anything pop up for you, Leah and Joy? What we have Allison here. If you're a young person, and it's weird. No, it's not weird. It's normal. But the new wave of people trying to break into sports are all women. I would say, and Joy, you were there. I would say maybe 70% of that conference was women. And so I think it's cool. What point of view or questions would you have, for Allison, if there's anything that's popped up from any of this?
I had one question. Being that you've been with the Giants for so long, I know talking to some other sports professionals, a lot of people move around. Do you ever feel like you have maybe missed out on another opportunity being in the same place for 30 plus
100%.
years?
100%. That's a great question. And I often think about that, you know, like I see people getting recruited out of here. They've gone on to different positions. So, and not necessarily even the females, like the men. So Peter John Baptiste, who was one of my first interns back in the, you know, late 90s, he came in, we hired him when I had my daughter. And he was my, you know, my assistant for assistant director, all that for forever. And now what is he, senior vice president, maybe owner of the Cleveland Browns? So so he came in and left. And then, you know, it's been great to see Jen, who worked with me, Jen Conley. She was with me in my department, and she was a director of CR, and now she's vice president of PR here. So she's been able to move around. But when I see people leave and move around, I'm like, I feel like, did I miss something? Like, is this where I'm supposed to be? Like, is this I don't know. Like, should I, you know, but here's the other thing. So and again, back to the family organization, I had a lot of flexibility. I'm going to be, you know, full disclosure, I had a lot of flexibility. My husband was special ops. He was gone. So, you know, I would drop the kids off at school. They would, you know, I would have to go home, get everybody to swim practice. So I would work until 3:30. You know, so when I would do all my calls you know, back then you would do all your calls in the car on the way home. And then, you know, but now it's like, I think I had the best of both worlds for my situation, and everybody's situation is different. You know what I mean? So I think for me, best of both worlds. And if I hadn't had the situation that I was in, maybe there would have been other opportunities, but I definitely think that from time to time. I have a question.
Yeah.
Kurt, you said when you met Joy, she came up to you and she introduced herself to you the way you teach people. Can you tell me how that is?
Yeah, so I have an acronym I call ICE, which is intro, connect, and exit. So many people, like when they're in a room with a stranger, your players or even the people on your staff, one of the things is most people won't go say hi to someone because they're worried about all the variables. I like to boil it down to the most controllable thing. I can walk up to Allison and say, hey, Allison, I don't want to interrupt you. I just wanted to come meet you and introduce myself. Intro, like break the ice, ICE. All right. There's nothing fancy about that. I literally say, I don't mean to interrupt. I'm not even trying to tie you up right now. I want to introduce myself. Connect is what I want to do, especially for me. So I'll give you some background on me. I'm from the projects. I tell people I'm from the real hood, not the rap hood, like not like an exaggerated thing. Like the McDonald's across the street from our projects, they just walked away one day and never came back. They got robbed so many, it was just bad. So I don't come from pedigree. My first day in the finance world, I had lugs on, like, which is like bootleg Timberlands. Like,
no, I know. Yeah.
Okay, I didn't know what business casual was. So I had to get there early and watch people go into work. And then I went across the street to Meijer, which is like a little retail store that sells produce too, and like get a pair of khaki. I didn't know it. So I say all that to say this. When I met people early on, all I wanted to do was get their business card and get the hell out of there before they asked a question where I would felt stupid or even prove myself stupid. There's nothing wrong with not knowing. I mean, sometimes we're dumb on stuff. And so that was the exit piece. Like, hey, Allison, I don't want to interrupt. I was just wondering if you had a business card on you so I can contact you sometime. I've been meeting professionals. I think you'd be someone that could help me. Do you have a card or a way that we can connect? Perfect. As soon as they give that to me, I want to get the hell out of there. Right? Joyce was different. It was intro connect. She had some fancy technology. And then she did a little bit of a cool elevator pitch on like, hey, you know, I'm with this group and blah, blah, blah. And what I loved about it is a group came behind after they saw her. And I don't know if you were with Scotty, who's going to help us out on this, and some other people, but we ended up having like 5 people do it. But I was sitting there with a lady who's like a big timer in boxing, like one of the most powerful women in boxing. And like, we don't know anybody there. We're just eating breakfast. And these young women come out and I saw her face light up because I don't know her age, but I know she's not younger than me and I'm 42. And I know she didn't grow up in a world where young women, especially young Black women, felt like they could come up to professionals and be like, here's my spiel. I'm trying to go get the best career for myself. And it was one of the most amazing experiences. So in that moment, I think, I don't know how I'm going to help Joy and some of these other, I'm going to stay connected with them and help them the best way I can.
It's amazing. That's great. That is awesome. Good job. Good job.
Any questions from you, Leah? I got a couple questions that we'll get Allison on here back into her day.
No, you actually touched on it. I was going to ask her, what does she look for when she's picking someone to come in? Because I know a lot of times we talked about having connections to get your foot in the door. So I was just wondering, when you don't have a connection, like what are some ways to stand out?
And truth be told, so with all the D&I stuff that we're working on now, we're no longer connections. And I'm going to give you full disclosure. I'm going to be honest. My son just came back from LA. He was out there doing an internship, graduated the whole thing. It looks like the way his job, like he's applying for jobs, and I'm not familiar with this, but out there, it's like those agencies, they start programs, training programs in cycles. So it looks like he's going to end up in a January cycle. So literally, he got back Friday. And he's like, what am I going to do? What am I going to, he can teach swimming. He can do all that. It's, what is it, August 9th right now? How much longer are you going to teach swimming for? He also can teach skiing, but you can't start skiing until up here. Who knows? Maybe in January. So he said to me, he's like, and my kids nobody's ever asked this. Mom, you think I could work game day with you? And I'm like, I don't think so. I don't think so. I don't think we hire like that. That's around the pond now. I don't think so. I actually went and I said, do you guys have any place for him? They're like, oh, he's worked here before, hasn't he? I'm like, no, none of my kids have ever worked here. Like, your kids never worked? I'm like, no. Like, they were teaching swimming. They were working DEA. They were doing all that stuff. So to that point, so normally, like in the years ago, that would have been an easy thing. Like, and I was like, I went to HR and I'm shaking. I'm like, I hate to ask this, and they're like, yeah, have him, we'll have him help out and, be a PA or something. So but that's not the way we do it anymore. So because they've created all these D&I committees and whatnot, we don't hire like that. We don't know people who come in. So Tara, who is working with us now, she is our community and youth football manager. Resume, phenomenal. She is off the charts. Like, she is such a great employee. People try to steal her. I'm like, no, she's mine. And again, it was great resume and great conversation. So, and I feel like you just don't be afraid to like shoot an email to somebody, say, hey, exactly like you said about the introduction. I think you can do that in an email too. I really do. I think that I've done that. Like, I've been met with that before. And I think just like, hey, I noticed you on whatever. Don't go look at my LinkedIn. Supposedly, I don't have the password. One of the kids does. And they said to me, like my son was in college, and they said, hey, Mom, we did this thing in class, and we have LinkedIn, and we had to get 2 people to respond to us. I said, oh, that's great. Who'd you choose? He's like, well, one person got back to me. The other person didn't. And they noticed that in class. I'm like, who didn't get back to you? He's like, you. And I'm like, I'm the worst. But like, I'm thinking, but like, send the email, introduce yourself, because your personality, I know emails are tricky. You know what I mean? Like, sometimes they come off weird, but like, I feel like if you're, hey, just wanted to say hi, notice that you did this, congratulations. I'm also looking to work in this industry, blah, blah, blah. Don't be afraid to reach out. Really don't. That's it. You got to trust your gut. Go for it.
Hey, ending questions here. One of them is, again, this is really just for the audience. Like, Allison's story is not only unique, but just, I also know plenty of people who do what you do that don't have the relations you have. So again, just the world universe sending me signs. I'm watching my favorite thing of the year right before the Super Bowl is the Walter Payton Man of the Year. And your guy, Eli Manning, wins it. And who gets shouted out again? Right? Allison Stangeby. And I just thought, wow, that's so cool. But in that moment, what hit me is, I think you have one of the coolest jobs. But when I think about, the whole world was watching what the Giants did after 9/11, and I know you were a part of that response. The whole world's watching what happens after COVID. Your best moment that you tell people is that first Super Bowl that you were a part of. But how did you manage not bringing home wins and losses? And also in the work you do, there's a lot of tragedy too. There's a lot of kids that aren't going to make it. There's a lot of, I respect what you do so much. And it is, hey, let's elevate Allison. Here's this cool job. And I want ladies to know all the opportunities you can do. But on that one, I think a pretty particular person has to have that role. How do you not come home, not only wins and losses, everyone in the league has to deal with not bringing home wins and losses, but you got to bring home sometimes, things don't go so well for the people you're working with.
Oh, you know what? Honestly, I feel like there's a balance. You got to strike a balance. And as I feel like you are so empathetic to situations, and like your heart bleeds for people, like just bleeds. And then you have to turn around and turn it on. Like, okay, you know, like, so you go from one thing to the other. And it's probably very unhealthy, and I probably need some therapy, but like, I feel like it's like a lot of stuff is compartmentalized. So, you know, you just kind of like, all right, we know it doesn't all work out well. And in knowing that and being able to be there for the families and just be like, you know, we're thinking of you. And again, that we're thinking of you. You know, and we worked with Sandy Hook. We did the whole Sandy Hook thing after 2012. We brought 800 people down to the stadium. This is really pretty cool. So we worked with the Philadelphia Eagles, Julie over there. She and I connected, and I said, Jewel, I'm bringing some of the families from whose kids were in that school that day. Would you guys consider doing something with us? So we formed a huge circle, players on both sides and families. Like, no, you never do anything with your opponent. And we thought, oh, it was just like, you know, again, that's just, you got to feel it. Like, you're like, this is the right thing to do. We got to do this. So, but there are definitely times where it's really hard, and you kind of just like, no, you're just like, this sucks. This just sucks. And let's be honest, because life is this. Again, life is not social media. Everything's not beautiful. Life is ebbs and flows. And, you know, for all the bad stuff, we got some good stuff. We got that kid. I don't know. Did you guys see that? The first round draft pick was announced by this kid, Sam Prince. It's a great little story. If you get a chance, look it up. So Sam went through a heart transplant, and his wish was to announce the Giants' first round pick. So that was he wanted to do it in 20. He was scheduled to do it in 20, obviously never happened. 21, we couldn't do it. So we did it this year. So he announced Kayvon, and it is great. And he has become like a rock star for the Giants. So that's heart transplant. Like, that's a great story. You know, you have kids through the J Fund, Tom Coughlin J Fund. I help with the scholarship program. We award scholarships to the kids who've, you know, gone through cancer treatment, and now they're going off to college. Like, great stories. So
that leads me into something, and I apologize. This is the way my brain works. I'm always thinking, how do I connect people? So if this is off-putting, I apologize. Somebody who wants to meet people in your world, do you have a problem with them spending a couple years or adjacent to a charity that you know these powerful people around, with the expectation that they hopefully make connections? Or is that just...
No, I think that's a great way to go. And truth be told, like, I say to people who are looking into getting into sports and marketing, and you can't actually get your foot into a team, don't be afraid to look at a charity that has a relationship with a team. Don't be afraid to look at sponsorship. So like Ford, they've got a sports marketing department. Like, all those different areas, they have, you know, companies, PNC, you know, just the different PSE&G, PNC, banks, car dealerships, car manufacturers. They all have relationships with sports industry, with people in the sports industry. And that's a great way in. Dunkin' Donuts, you know, so just, if you're looking at your favorite team's website, you're going to see all the different sponsors on there, and you can go that route. The other thing, so it's not bad, because you're not working weekends, and you're not working, you know, training camp, and, you know, middle of the night, you know what I mean? So it's definitely a way to get in.
I love it. Mrs. Richardson, any last questions from you? And then I got one, and we'll get Allison on her way here.
I don't have a question. More of a statement, and we talked about it super early on, but that transition from an assistant role and creating your own path, I think that's really something, like, the people listening to this podcast should go back and listen to that statement again. The path isn't always there. From my personal experience, I was an assistant at one time as well. The path also wasn't there for me. I created it. Just Allison, the same. Like, you saw the opportunity and you took it and you ran with it. So I think that's important to retouch on that. Like, the path isn't always created. Sometimes you have to clear it.
Yeah, and I think that's also good, because we're going to do this long enough with enough perspectives that one of the pieces of advice we had was like, hey, and a lot of times you can't put your head down and work. You've got to go take it. Now, to some degree, you're saying put your head down and work, but you're also saying just start doing the work, the extra work. And so I don't want that to be conflated with anyone. I know there are people going to fall in love with one of our other episodes where the lady's like, women, when you get told put your head down and work, that's for them, not for you, which I believe in. What you're saying is put your head down and do the extra work. Like, you were, and I love that you worked yourself out of the assistant role. Like, I don't have time for you guys now. I got this other thing growing. My final question is this for you, and we thank you so much for making time with us, especially during the season. What I'm very interested in is because I'm the networking guy. I'm in the NFL player engagement book as a subject matter expert on networking with Steve Ferrazzi, who I've never met, but I read his book, Never Eat Alone, and that's how I learned networking. My old boss gave me that book, and I just read it, and I'm like, oh, there's my niche. That's the serendipitous, the universe, God, whatever people believe in, handed me that. And I ran with it. And, one day I'm in a room with Saquon Barkley. We're talking about homelessness. And I'm like, you have Allison upstairs who's going to be the best. And Ashley wasn't in that meeting. But the next year, I think I was out there. Daniel Jones is the draft pick. We're talking about something. And Ashley's like, hey, do you want to go meet Allison? I'm like, it's going to be super weird because I'm going to look like a psycho that I've been talking about this lady who I've never met. But I'm interested in, if you could share with us, who's the person you've met through your work that you couldn't believe, like, oh, this is happening. I'm in the room with this person. Can be trivial, could be celebrity, could be business person. Have you had those moments where you're like, I can't believe this is happening to this assistant from 1991?
All right, this is what I really am. So this is crazy. I can't believe I'm gonna say this because it's so superficial. You know what I mean? And I don't really think I'm superficial. Like, well, maybe sometimes I am, but I try not to be. I think in my work I can't be, but I have a best friend since kindergarten. So we've been friends for over 50 years, 51. She's going to tell you she's not that old, but she's full of it because she is. So she and I want to say in high school, started following a band. This is crazy. And we love the band U2. And it's absolutely crazy. And we started in the 80s following them, the whole thing. Slept out for tickets when you had to sleep out for tickets, all that type of stuff, waiting on Ticketmaster. So, and we've probably seen them. I don't even know. I can't even guess how many times I've seen them. So but we never met them. And we kind of probably have had the opportunity to, but we never did. So backwards. So December 2010, her mom passes away from cancer. And she was our families were very close. She was like my mom. It was very sad. Fast forward 8 weeks later, my father passes away out of nowhere. So we are the two of us together are we're disasters. We're just disasters. So John, you two came in July, and John's like, I'm going to set, you guys are you're going to meet Bono. This is your thing. So we're sitting backstage, both of us, and we're just we're still crying. We're just a mess because her dad and my dad and her mom, everybody was friends. Everybody was friends, and what's going on here? This is too weird. And we're sitting there waiting, and all of a sudden we're like, we gotta go. We can't meet him. We can't meet him. What happens? What happens if he's a jerk to us? What happens if he's not who we think he is? I love him because he's so philanthropic and he changes the world. And, he's done so many great, Bono's done so many great things. She loves him, the whole musician piece of it. So we get up and we're getting ready to walk out. We're like, forget it. This is going to ruin our lives. We've had the worst year of our lives. This is going to ruin it. And one of the guys comes in, he's like, all right, come on, let's go meet him. And it was he was so great. I'm like, oh my God, this is amazing. He was just so nice to us. And, we walked away thinking to ourselves, we were so happy it went like that. And had it not gone like that, our lives would have been for naught. Really, we've been following them. So that was a great moment. I know it's really superficial and
I love it.
But if you have a favorite actress or an actor, so that was our favorite. So that was fun. So, and it solidified the fact that all right, we've probably spent all of our life savings on following them around the country and doing stuff. So there you have it. So yeah, that was my superficial comment. But, and of course, I've met so many great people. Really, seriously?
Well, you're you in the city where it's most popular to be you. Are you kidding?
I've met anybody from, doctors, nurses, teachers, forget the celeb piece of it. Doctors, teachers, nurses, those people who are changing the world, people who are, sacrificing the, stuff so that they can go out and make the world a better place. There's this lady, Jenny, that Ethan, who works with me, found, and she goes down into Newark to the, at night, and she just brings the homeless people whatever they need. She's probably one step away from being homeless herself. She's a hero. She's amazing. You meet all these people and you're like, oh like, if I could just, I'm nothing. I'm just a facilitator. Like, I just like, we'll just try and make it happen. These are the real people. They are the real people. So, I appreciate, all of your thoughts and like all the great comments and everything, but like, it's just, those are the people. Nurses, we always say nurses are the first people into heaven. They go. Nurses go in, and just a lot of great people in this world. A lot.
Well, we appreciate you. Any last thoughts, Leah and Joy?
Good.
No, just thank you so much. It was great hearing from you.
It was great
Thank
meeting
you.
you guys. Send me an email.
Sure. Yeah, I would say you ladies are all on the email with her. Stay connected. To the ladies and guys that are watching this, I call myself a girl dad after Kobe's passing. As part of the reason that this got prompted is I've met all these badass women, and what if something like that happens to me? How do we have a memorial or a memorandum of all this IP that's in women that can teach other people how to be high achievers? So my saying, ladies, is you can't stop a go-getter. The information is out there. I hope you find it. I'd stake it. Normally we tell people to follow people on social media, but we got old digital special ops here. But I'm telling you, this is one of my favorite ones that we've done. And we've only recorded one other one, but I know all the other women's stories, and I'm just so thankful for you. So we can't thank you enough. You're the definition of a lady go-getter, someone who went out and made it happen. So thank you so much. We appreciate you. And hopefully if this gave you value, you'll hit like and subscribe, and we'll see you soon.